Alright, so I went ahead and bought a couple of flute kits from Charlie Montetoyello. He's Blue Bear Arts Online. He's got an extensive YouTube channel on how to make flutes, and if anybody is really trying to teach you how to make them, he is. Believe me, he's put a lot of time and effort. I bought his book and really have enjoyed his videos, but I have struggled with flute making. I haven't really pursued it. I've tried to make a couple on my own and would like to get back to it, but I thought, the kits would be a good way to start out and give you a sense of, for one thing, I'd probably have success because he's done most of the hard work, and I wouldn't have all this work in it and be disappointed and not get a sound. So I bought these kits, and I made this one for a friend. The kits are in Western Cedar, and this one's in G sharp. When you put the kits together, they are pretty much in G sharp, at least the two I had, and they're in 432, pretty close. So I went ahead and used a burning tool and did that exercise where I went up the holes and burned out the holes to bring that into tune. Let's take a look at the tuner, see how well I did on that. So not too bad, and I'm able to play with the tempura on YouTube, which is what I like to do. I think for me, just having that tonic reference helps add another dimension to the music. I did do a couple of things different though. He includes a block for the fetish, and I went ahead and made my own, which I think helps out. If you make a wind tunnel here with wings on the side, I think that helps out. And then I also capped it with a mouthpiece of cherry, and then just sanded it down. Just took a block of cherry, sanded it flat after I got it together. There was no hole drilled in it. Put the block on, drilled the hole, and then trimmed the block with the saw, and then sanded it smooth. Then I coated it with some walnut oil, and then used his flute wax that I made from his recipe and wiped the flute wax on it. So one problem I did have is the wind ways, the actual wind way between the true sound hole and the slow air chamber, the sacs they like to call it. For some reason I always cut these things too deep. So what I did, let me bring this in, see if I can show you better what I ended up doing. So what I did is I went ahead and shimmed it. I make instruments, so I had a lot of very thin rib lumber around that, there's always mistakes, so I've always got patchwood around. So I cut a little shim and glued it in there, and it turned out pretty well. You can see it's a very shallow, maybe 1/32 of an inch or 3/32 of an inch. And so that worked pretty well. The next flute over here is another experiment. I did pretty much the same thing. I glued on a cherry block and then shaped it and made my own fetish. But I thought, I wanted a G flute, and how do I get that flute in G when it's already a certain length? I need to lengthen it in order to lower the tone, right? So I went ahead and made me a mahogany block, which I routed, glued together, and then glued onto the end of the flute. Let me put my this back, and I'll show you what it looks like. So it's truly an experiment. Obviously, I haven't even tuned it yet, and I need to obviously shape this. And this is basically what the blocks look like too, except they were smaller when I glued them on for the end cap, or for the mouthpiece. You just glued it on, shaped it, drilled a hole. In this case, I had to pre-drill the hole because it was a huge hole, so I went ahead and routed it out, put the, split this, routed it, put the two blocks together, and then glued it on the end using a clamp that was long enough to hold it end to end like that. And so far, it's held up. Obviously, I haven't put it through a lot of tests, or rigorous tests yet. Let's see if I can get a sound out of it at all. So I will definitely be working with it, shaping this down and working with it and see what I can get sound wise, and I'll make another video. But I just thought I'd throw these two up there for people who are interested in making Native American flutes. This is an option. It's a time-consuming process. I really am fascinated by them, and there's so many wonderful makers out there. I'm fortunate enough to have several, and I try not to have any more than days of the week, though. 7 or 8, because if I can play one a day, I kind of look at it that way. Although, if you're into instruments like me, it is an addiction. You could have hundreds and have no problem with it, but then they sit and they don't get played, so that's my concern with that. Also, this one had a longer windway, and I'll show you that. And again, on this one, I used a burning tool and tried to burn out the track, and I had success with that. However, it wasn't clean looking, and that bothered me. I wanted it to be smooth, so of course I started fiddling with it and messed it up. So I went ahead and deepened the track, and then cut another little shim, okay, and then put that shim in there, and it does work. I mean, it doesn't sound great because I added that block of mahogany on that I want to try to cut down and see what it sounds like, see if I can make it into a lower toned flute. Oh, by the way, I added 4 inches on, which really I only needed 2 inches. And how I came to that conclusion was I made a tube of paper and just rubber banded it around the end of the flute to kind of give it an extension. The paper became an extension of the tube of the flute, and that's how I figured how much wood I would need to try to get the flute into a G. And then of course I made the block longer for errors and stuff like that. So it's interesting stuff. The blocks are nothing too fancy. They're just made out of cherry, and there's a windway there. Cut out the side, and then it slides on like that. And he provides some nice leather with his kits, and quite a bit of sandpaper too. I was surprised at that, and very useful. So if you're thinking about doing something like this, the kit way is not a bad way to go. This one turned out pretty well, and I hope my friend enjoys that. You can see the difference in the holes. This is the one I've tuned, and here's the one that is pre-drilled that I haven't tuned yet. And so the holes are wider. They're not very neat because my burning tool is rather small, but you don't have to have a perfect hole. Here's the burning tool, so it passes through these other tools. So I just heated it up and burned around the outside like that. I just used a circular motion, and then burned it a little bit, checked it, heated it up again, burned it a little bit, and came back out. You can also undermine a little bit by turning the tool like that, and that seemed to help as well. But other than that, there you have it, some Native American flutes experiments. This one certainly is. We'll see how that one comes out. And this one, fairly successful. It plays and it's in tune. So, thanks for watching.